Hello, this is David. I wanted to record some stuff because I think it's important. Oprah's been on a journey. I mean, everyone's on the same journey for peace of mind, right? I mean, that's happiness. To be at peace, to not be in want, to be mentally in a good place. I mean, that's life. If you're not in that place, well then it doesn't matter how much money you own. It none of that matters. I mean, right now I'm as broke as I've ever been, but mentally I'm in the best place that I've ever been. But I still have a lot better place to get into, and I'm excited about that. But I suppose what usually comes when a person gets in a good mental state is then they start becoming valuable. The more valuable you become, the more people want them, and it brings fame, and then fame can bring more. Instead of bringing more um, happiness, even though they get more attention, it doesn't mean that their attention's a good thing, because then you got more judges, right? You got more people judging everything you do, and then people want to dissect you like a frog on a science project. But I guess all that comes with the territory, and in some ways, I hope I never become famous because I've screwed up more than anybody in the Bible. Well, I guess I never killed anybody like Moses or King David, but in some ways, yeah, I never killed anybody, but anyway, let me pause this for a second. But basically, we're all on the same journey, mentally, and I truly believe in Genesis, Adam and Eve did not know what fear was. They didn't know what worry was. They lived in the now moment. Imagine not having, Imagine if nobody was judging you, right? No one was judging you. No one. There's no judgment, no condemnation, no worry, no fear, no self doubt, no. They were in that mental place that we wish we were in, right? They were there. I know it. And let me say something real quick. A lot of people don't believe the Bible because the time thing doesn't match up. But I've had a revelation about time, and I'll share that real quick. And maybe I'm the only person alive. There is one other person named Tony Kemp on It's Supernatural that found out about the time thing, because he said he was called up into heaven. This guy named Tony Kemp, he's a black man. Got called up in heaven. As he was up in heaven, um, he saw a book near an angel, and in the book, he's looking at it, and it said that when Moses was up in the mount, time was suspended, which didn't surprise me at all. Didn't surprise me at all. I guess he was up there, what, 80 days or something? But that did not surprise me at all, because I had my own supernatural experience when I was 20, and I had no clue what it meant. I was praying, and I'm kind of a one-track mind type mentality, that when I enter into something, that I'm totally one track, and that's just the way I am. I mean, I could mentally break it down and explain it, but that would take too much time. But And I'm that way. You could call it a heart-driven person. Um, so when I connected with God and when I was younger, I fully connected. I mean, fully connected. And that gave me an advantage because sensing into that realm, because when I fully connected with all my heart, the Bible talks about that if you seek me with all your heart. See, our heart is the lens or the portal of our spirit that, you're going to connect with another spirit who's God, right? So my heart was in perfectly drawn toward him. And because I never thought with my head, didn't even know how to think with my head, which is a whole nother story. I was in this powerful connection, and it opened up the portal that Adam and Eve existed in, who were like angels and had never had children. They didn't have children until they sinned. But I connected with that portal powerfully. And I felt time slow down. And I just thought that was what you felt when you prayed. But I knew what it felt like, and I instantly knew what it was. I knew time was slowing down. So then, and I've never smoked pot, never, not once in my life, never took a drug. Worked in the medical field for 20 years in life and death situations. So I'm not dumb. I do have attention deficit disorder, which is a whole other thing, but made my life living hell, but that's a whole other story. So anyway, connected, time slowed down. So the next time I'm praying, I like the way it felt. I like the experience of it, like the closeness of being near God, and it's like the best thing there is. So I'm praying in the car. My friend's in the passenger seat. Um, my buddy named Ralph. When I was a kid, I had a buddy named Ralph. So he's sitting next to me in the passenger seat, and he's driving. I'm in the passenger seat. So I start praying, and I connect again. Time this time really slows down powerfully, and the time slowing down in the car slowed down so much that it enveloped my friend next to me, and he felt it, and he knew what it was. That's crazy that he knew what it was. He looked over at me, and he wasn't a Christian, had no clue I was praying. He looks over at me and he says, in a panic because he's freaking out. He don't know what's going on, but he says time is slowing down. So I just thought that's what you felt when you prayed. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why it was going on. I do now. So anyway, time slows down. And as soon as he looks over at me in a panic, I look over at him, and I'm embarrassed because I'm praying and that's a private thing, and I didn't think it would affect him or he would know. So as soon as I stop praying and I disconnect, then time resumes. Now, why is all this important? Because that's what was going on in the garden. It has to be. I don't see how there can be any other explanation. And let me prove that real quick. I wasn't wasn't planning on talking about this, but this is a good video. Why not? This will be good. So let me show you my proof on this, or the completely logical explanation. So Adam and Eve were keeping the garden, which was a place of no time. They didn't die, and of course they didn't die. There wasn't time. Now I also think they might have been a different spiritual entity because the Bible says the flesh. I just have a sneaking hunch, and I have no evidence on this at all, but I have a sneaking hunch that when the Bible says flesh, that's what they got transformed into. Because I think they had bodies maybe like Jesus, who could pop in rooms and stuff, from one dimension to another. And like, remember when Jesus just popped in a room and then said to doubting Thomas, touch my hands, the fingernail thing, or touch the holes in my, actually it's probably up here in the wrist. And so he just popped right in the room. So I think, and I don't have I haven't thought about this too much, but I just have a feeling that they weren't flesh. Probably the other mankind on the earth, because remember he said, let them be fruitful and multiply. I just think we had two things going on at once. The one, we're keeping the earth because God knew that the other group was going to fail, and then they were going to join together, which they did. We see in the Bible, as soon as Cain sinned, he went and found somebody to marry. Who was that? It was them. It was the other people that were being fruitful and multiplied that also grew, and it's almost like they matched up at the time. Like their intellect grew. Now, I don't know how much evolutionary phase they went through and all that stuff. Maybe they went through the full spectrum, because the fossil record shows that it did happen. So there was one group that was going through all that, and then there was another. I assume it was only just Adam and Eve. And so then as soon as they fall out, then God, of course, says, where art thou? Because I don't think they even realized that that the dimension of time, I felt it when I felt time. Actually, the first time when I felt time slow down, I didn't know what it was. So when they got kicked into time, when Adam and Eve got kicked into time, I bet you they didn't have any clue what happened. Of course, you're going to die if you get kicked into time. You're subject to the rules of this dimension. You're going to die. Now, they didn't die right away, but they died. Let me pause for a second. So then if we go fast forward into history, all of a sudden you come up to a guy named Abraham, right? And what does Abraham do? Abraham believes God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Now, why would that be righteousness, to believe God? Well, Eve didn't believe God, and she took into herself something that mankind never knew. Actually, two things, but I don't want to give away secrets on that, so we're not going to go down that way. But I know the secrets on that, and I'm not going to go into it. I'm trying to save some stuff for some books, so I'm not going to go into that secret. But this time thing's not like a big deal to me, even though it really is a big deal, knowing about this kind of stuff. But to go forward on this story, so then Abraham comes along. Of course, then he gets the resurrection of the seed of Sarah, whose seed was dead. That seed was dead in her, right? Because when a woman gets so old, it dies. So that got resurrected, and then that got passed all the way up to all of a sudden a woman named Mary. So Mary's here, and then very hiddenly, without anyone really thinking about this resurrected egg that got passed through the generation, and even had some merging of the Gentile with it, then hooks up with this other seed that comes from the Father into this virgin named Mary. Now, was Mary holy? Yeah, she had the resurrected seed of Sarah. That's the only thing she had, and it was time. It was finally time. But there was nothing holy about Mary. Maybe the fact that she was only 14, and 14 years of pretty pure individuals. Their mind isn't contaminated by all the garbage of the world yet. Their minds are fairly pure, but other than that, Um, and I'm sure she was a good person, but she wasn't holy by anything that she did, like the Catholic Church wants to say. But they don't know the secrets because there's a powerful scripture that says, "Trust in the Lord and lean not unto your own understanding." Now, Cain in the Bible, Cain was the first one that tried to contaminate the truth, because everything that Satan sows is a lie. He created the first lie. So Cain, obviously he's not in a very good spirit of truth once he murders his brother and all that stuff. But Cain comes up with the first ideology, well, I'll give corn as an offering. But that wasn't the truth. So he started a new that was a new religion actually starting to be born. And he was mad. Oh, he was mad. Just like some of the religious people are mad when you don't agree with their religion. So he was mad. That was about religion. That was what he believed. I mean, it really was. That was the first religion. But it wasn't based on truth. But that's how religion started. It started there. But God spoke, rebuked him. He got mad and killed his brother. And that goes on and on today and day. Even Paul, one of the Jews, was killing and breaking the law to keep the law. The Apostle Paul, or who was Saul, was breaking the law to keep the law. And of course, we see that today in politics. People go so far full circle that they break the law to keep the law. It's just insanity. But let's not go in that direction. But so anyway, this guy named Abraham believes God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. But what did he believe? The Word. Who's the Word? In John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And who is the Word? He's the truth. Now, I'll come back to that point in a second. It was considered righteousness because he believed the truth. And we'll come back to that. Let's continue with the Genesis revelation of time. So, after he receives the truth, who Eve accepted a lie and changed everything for humanity, he accepts the truth. He believed God, and it was counted as righteousness. What's right? Of course, anything that's true is right, right? Truth is righteousness. We don't make it as some big holy thing, but truth is righteousness, right? And it's so easy to get off that path. It's so easy to get, like you talk about ego, which is not really ego, it's the heart. But you talk, a lot of the new stuff coming out was talking about ego, and all this stuff. But it has nothing to do with ego. It has to do with the heart. So basically, where was I going? I forget where I was going to go now. Let me pause it a second. So basically, I don't know where I was going, but anyway, he believed the truth, and that was, to God, that was counted as righteousness. So when he did that, that began the Jewish, when God finally found someone that had the perception of a heart to be able to see and believe the truth, that's when it started people heading back to God, because we lost our way because we accepted a lie. And any problem that you see in humanity is going to be because somebody's not seeing the truth. Now we see there's always two sides to everything, right? And usually one side won't give because they want to see the other side of the cone. So what you have, I just saw this in my head, is a balancing scale, right? We'll use this water as a balancing scale. So there's always two sides to truth, to something, but you have to make a judgment on which way to go on these things, and it can be just a small bit of reasoning to go one direction versus the other direction, but it's the right way to go. So, but people, because they can't see the truth, see the problem. You know, they don't see the scale that if it's tilted just this much this way, then you've got to go that direction because that's closer to the truth. And it's kind of the situation that people get in with these problems in politics is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So you got to pick the one that leans the scale in the best direction. Then you got the other side fighting because there is some truth to what they're saying. And because we don't seek God, then we got to make these judgments because he has something better that you can't see. So we got to use our own understanding and pick the best truth, and usually it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. But because we don't pick God's way, we have to use our own understanding, and that's hard to do that. Humanity struggles there. So let me finish the time. Let me finish the time thing. So I could get off in so many millions of directions of truth. Truth is this 360-degree thing that it all ties together, just like space and time and the universe and everything else. So anyway, it all ties together. But anyway, so he separates Adam, and then the first thing he says to him is, "Be ye separate," because that's the way the sons of God were in the garden. You had Adam and Eve that was separate from the other people. So of course God says to Abraham, "Be separate. Be separate." And what he was trying to grow in them is the truth. And that's what the entire Jewish Old Testament is about. And what's the first thing you do? You implement a law, right? So that they know right and wrong. Because they got the judgment, but they couldn't make judgments on what's right and wrong, so God made the judgments for them. And he made certain judgments. And the law, what people understand is that the law is there just like you have a bullseye on an arrow, right? You try to hit the center, but doesn't mean you will. And mankind never hits the center, and God knows that. But you have to have a bullseye, right? If I'm shooting my works of life, I gotta have a bullseye. So people are mad at God because he's got a bullseye for people to try to hit. So everybody's mad, because he set down a law, like saying, I'm going to stone this person if they do that. That's what the law says, but God knows that he has to put that there, because if he doesn't put the bullseye there, then people won't come close to trying to hit it. So then after he brings all the law and all that stuff, and of course they crash and burn, they can't live by it. It's just an utter mess. So then he brings his grace, which is the other part of him. I mean, truth is the law, just like the law of gravity. Do we get mad at the law of gravity? If I tell you what, I live on a second-story apartment. If I am stupid enough to step off of what's outside here, and I know better than to do that, because gravity is just a law, it has no grace or mercy. That's the way laws are. But of course, then Jesus came, finally. He would have came probably a lot earlier if man would have got it together, but they never did. And anyway, he finally came. And then we get the second image of God, the rest of the download. And you have to look at it all together, to see the image of God. And let me pause this a second. So anyway, Abraham is separated. Abraham is separated because God has to start getting that information. He has to. It's just like if your hard drive crashed. I suppose I never thought of it this way. If your hard drive crashed, you got and it got destroyed by a virus. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to completely start over and put down all the programs. And that's kind of what the Old Testament was doing. The Old Testament was just putting in the programs and then finally putting in the other program, which was Jesus. That's all it was. And it took a long time. Because human beings are evil, as Jesus said. Everyone's evil. I'm evil. You're evil. Every Christian that's alive evil. Every minister has evil in him. And that's because everyone has a lie in them. And everybody believes some sort of lie. There's only one person that ever walked on the earth that never allowed a lie to penetrate into his brain because he wasn't subject to it. And that's a whole nother story, which I can't get into. Let me pause this a second. So anyway, so that kind of explains the time thing and the separation of the Jews. And culture is very infectious. Culture is very infectious. And that's what it was about. As far as the people being, culture is really a dangerous thing. It's a very powerful thing. Very powerful. I don't have time to get into that. But I really didn't get into what I wanted to talk about. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the mind. I might as well try to wrap this one up. But then we see the cumulation of Jesus having a new body, which perhaps was the same as what they had in the garden. I don't know that for sure, but I have a theory of that. So it's a new creature, more like an angel than a man. And I believe, and of course in heaven, I believe that's what we're going to be. So he was like the first fruits of it. And it's a place where he had nothing but truth in him. There's no confusion. With confusion, you have everything that's going on in politics today. That's called confusion, right? There won't be any of that because only truth will exist in people. It'll be natural as breathing air. It'll just be the only thing in the atmosphere, the only thing in heaven. There won't be any worry. There won't be fear. None of that stuff. And it's good to try to get to that point today because how can you think clear unless that happens? Unless you get to that, try to get to that state of mind. And that's why I kind of admire some of the stuff that you've tried to do. Because you're walking in that direction, and that's good. That's a good thing. It's really the first step that a person needs to take the next step. But I'm out of time. And this really wasn't even what I was going to talk about. I wanted to talk about all this mind stuff as far as mastering the mind and all that stuff. Having a clear mind. Because I know so many secrets that I don't think other people know. But, I don't got time for any more, so I guess this is what I'm going to send you. It's not what I wanted to do, but it's what came out. So, anyway.